It all begins in the world of painting arts, where the technique of channeling internal energy can materialize any drawing directly into reality. Both orthodox and unorthodox sects created their own styles, and depending on the ink used, the art gains a completely new effect. With this, these countless crazy strikes and powers end up mixing to form the vast martial world. So this is the famous and unforgiving world of the painting forest. In a dueling arena, two fighters clash fiercely using their giant brushes as weapons. The guy with a ponytail thinks his rival's move is cool, but quickly warns that the guy's art doesn't go beyond that. With a quick swing in the air, he creates the shape of a sharp ink sword. The opponent isn't intimidated and promises to wipe that arrogant look off his face right away. She spins her weapon and draws a glowing flaming symbol with great agility. Without wasting time, the adversary launches a barrage of dark swords in her direction. The woman retaliates by summoning an explosive lotus flower to block the direct attack. The clash of the two arts generates an absurd explosion of flames and ink flying everywhere. The sound of the heavy impact echoes throughout the massive clan pavilion. Watching from afar, the elders are completely in awe of the level of that duel. Serving tea nearby, the MC Muyong can't hide his fascination and thinks that display of power is absolutely beautiful. He analyzes how the woman manages to create fire by applying red ink directly over the arena's water. Next, he notices the rough strokes of the other fighter generating sharp attacks, finding it unreal to see such advanced techniques up close. For the humble servant, the famous Dragon and Phoenix Assembly ends up being the best school possible. Full of hope, he dreams that one day he will master the inks and shine on that grand stage. However, his daydream is cut short by the elder master yelling, wanting to know what the bold kid is doing just standing there. The old man gives him a harsh scolding, asking why the young man ignored the tea to watch the fight in such an insolent way. Startled, Muyong quickly apologizes and fills the cup, only receiving a pathetically harsh insult in response. Head down, the MC blames himself internally for losing focus on his job once again. Across the room, the patriarch of the Huang family asks his heir if he paid attention to the entire match. Next year, it will be the boy himself stepping into that arena to prove the unbeatable strength of their bloodline. Maintaining a stern look, he makes it clear that he won't accept any disappointments. The young master nods in agreement and promises to engrave the warning in his mind, so he doesn't fail. From afar, Muyong watches the heir in absolute silence. HWI is the guaranteed success of the family, carrying all the expectations of the prestigious Orthodox faction on his own. Everyone blindly trusts that he will showcase a painting art superior to anyone else's in the next tournament. The young man confesses feeling a lot of envy towards those who have the freedom to show their own art to the whole world. Later that night outside the pavilion, he reflects that he also keeps many brilliant ideas in his head. In his room, Muyong spreads several dragon drawings on the floor, proud of the artwork he would love to present. Sitting at the table, he realizes his recent paintings look too similar, and decides to test the same brush pressure used in the fourth match of the tournament. Suddenly, he remembers a shout ordering him to go clean the young master's library. Taking advantage of the perfect excuse, the boy jumps out of his chair and runs to fulfill the order right away. Tiptoeing, the servant enters the mansion very quietly and carefully. Upon reaching the gigantic library, he lets out a long sigh at the sight of so much mess and piled-up scrolls. The massive space holds the family's most valuable and ancient knowledge. On a central table rests a detailed white jade brush, considered the greatest treasure protected by the Huangs. Curious, he reaches out wanting to feel the weight of the weapon, and confesses a huge urge to test the magical artifact. Just then, a warning from the hallway saying time is up catches the boy completely off guard. He recognizes the elder's deep voice coming from the other side of the door. Without understanding why the old man is so irritated, Muyong quickly hides behind a bookshelf. In the next room, the patriarch praises the heir's strength and flawless technique, but warns that his creativity is the big problem. The old man rants that those paintings are cheap knockoffs, and that entering the tournament with something like that would be a huge embarrassment. Head down, the heir swallows the lecture in silence and only asks for forgiveness for the mistake. Faced with this resigned reaction, the master takes a deep breath trying to control his intense irritation. Calmer, he ends up apologizing for losing his patience so quickly, and the apprentice immediately forgives the attitude, understanding the pressure. They decide to end the training to rest. Meanwhile, the hidden intruder tries to figure out what kind of horrible art could have caused all that fury. As soon as the hallway is empty, the MC pushes the office door open very carefully. Dying of curiosity, he feels he needs to look at the art that disappointed the patriarch so much. Taking advantage of the quiet house, he locks the door behind him to avoid any unwanted visitors. With slow and very anxious steps, the boy approaches the center of the luxurious study room. Looking around, he is totally relieved to find that no one else is left there. Without delay, he leans over the wooden desk to analyze the large stretched paper. Staring at the massive ocean wave art, he even admits that the level of technical completion is insane. However, he brings a hand to his chin upon noticing something very odd in the drawing's overall structure. Some parts of that violent water crashing against the rocks seem way too familiar for his liking. The servant puts the pieces together in his head and instantly remembers seeing the exact same composition in an old book. Sitting surrounded by old books, he confirms that those strokes were taken directly from the clan's library manuals. Muyong thinks it's valid to copy the great masters to learn the basics, but he feels that this crossed the line. In his honest view, the young master simply copied and pasted the ancient techniques onto the paper, acting like a printing machine. Sliding his fingers near the wet ink, he decrees that the painting doesn't carry a single drop of the author's own interpretation. Closing his eyes, he tries to quickly imagine what he would do differently and innovatively if that work were his. Suddenly, an icy voice interrupts his thoughts, asking what he thinks of the piece. Young Master HWI calls the servant's name while staring right at his back. The scare makes the MC jump backward and stutter in a panic. Desperate about the situation, he throws himself on the floor, begging for forgiveness for snooping on the heir's private training. Ignoring the submission, HWI stands firm and repeats the question, wanting to extract only the boy's real opinion. Trembling with fear, Muyong argues that an insignificant servant could never have the right to judge his lord's work. The heir doesn't buy the excuse and reminds him that they have lived together for over 10 years, going through several important faction tournaments in the meantime. With that, he reveals knowing perfectly well that the servant attends to guests on purpose, just to guarantee the best angle of the combat arena. He knows very well that the boy's curious eyes practically sparkle with pure excitement while watching the intense duels. Someone who spends the whole day muttering about other people's techniques is certainly no layman, and understands absolutely everything about the complex art of painting. Cornered, the MC swallows hard and confesses he couldn't help but notice the details, asking if he made it too obvious. The young master maintains his firm posture, explaining he just wants to hear a truly honest opinion. He is looking for the perspective of someone who is genuinely passionate about the art of painting. Faced with this, Muyong bows to the floor and apologizes for his boldness before giving his assessment. Being very direct, he warns that he simply can't see the heir's essence in that piece. HWI is somewhat surprised by the comment and asks what the boy means by not seeing him there. The servant justifies that you can't notice any real intention behind those brushstrokes. In his view, even a single stroke on the paper needs to carry a true purpose to make sense. Bothered, the master retorts, asking if reproducing something with absolute perfection doesn't count as a valid purpose. Trembling slightly, the young man tries to soften it by saying his technique is already flawless, so he should focus on going beyond that. He reinforces that truly original art is only born when the author's thoughts are put into the ink. Hearing this moral lesson, the heir absorbs the words in reflective silence. He concludes that those thoughts are far from belonging to an ordinary person, seeming to come from someone who has trained for a long time. Coming to a clear conclusion, he deduces that the servant himself must also paint following that exact intense purpose. Caught red-handed, Muyong impulsively agrees without really thinking about the consequences. Realizing the massive blunder he just made, the boy tries to fix the situation right away. Totally panicking, he waves his hands denying everything and says it would be absurd for a simple servant to dare to paint. The young master gives a slight smirk and decides to get to the bottom of this story. With a challenging tone, he warns that he'd better not find any hidden paintings in the guy's room. In no time, the duo is standing in front of the family's humble servant quarters. The MC gets butterflies in his stomach, knowing exactly what's going to happen next. Seeing the master unroll his precious scrolls, he concludes in despair that his life is over right there. He thinks that using the material thrown away by the family to train in secret is an unforgivable flaw for someone of his class. Clinging to his drawings, he cries internally at having to say goodbye to everything without even coming close to his big dream. Analyzing all the mess scattered on the floor, HWI merely asks if those were all the hidden works. The pages reveal striking strokes full of energy, showing surprising raw talent. Each brushstroke demonstrated a very creative vision of the beasts marked on the paper. With a clinical eye, the heir evaluates that it lacks a lot of polish, but acknowledges that the foundation is extremely solid. What amazes him the most is never having seen that unique style in any of the major factions. Very intrigued by that discovery, he questions the real reason the boy spent so much time painting. A bit embarrassed, the servant scratches his head and admits it might end up sounding very arrogant on his part. Gathering courage, he reveals once and for all his desire to become a true artist of the painting forest. HWI processes the information and wants to know the exact reason behind this sudden ambition. The young man recalls the time he joined the clan and saw a martial tournament up close for the first time. That huge arena packed with powerful people left a permanent mark on his memory. To him, seeing the masters creating crazy things with ink seemed like the purest form of expressing one's will to the world. In that magical instant, he felt a spark of hope awaken deep in his chest. Life working for the family wasn't so bad, but he felt he was just following a script already decided by others. Watching the sky, he always wished he had the same freedom to follow his own path. He wanted to be able to fly far away from that routine trapped within the walls of the immense estate. With a beating heart, he explains the conclusion he drew from all this. He decided he wanted to leave his own art scattered across this vast world to finally give some meaning to his journey. The young master listens to the vent in silence, clearly touched by the sincerity of the words. He realizes the boy has the intense passion that is missing in his own technique. Breaking the heavy silence, he calls the guy's name firmly and gets an immediate response. HWI confesses that those actions deserved a heavy punishment, but the arts on the floor ended up filling his mind with inspiration. Without beating around the bush, he orders the MC to keep painting all his ideas openly for him. In exchange for this help to take control of the family, the heir makes a promise to free the boy from servitude for good. Completely shocked by the proposal, Muyong flashes a giant smile and asks if he's really serious. Emotion takes over his body at the real chance of finally changing his destiny. Soon excitement is stamped on his face, seeing a bright future ahead. Inside his own head, he repeats several times that he is now very capable of achieving his big goal. Shouting to the winds, he promises to give his all to painting, but gets a quick warning from the master asking him to keep quiet. From that night on, the two formed a secret partnership focused on elevating their artistic skills to the maximum possible. They spent hours locked in the library, studying every ancient technique available in the clan's massive collection. The MC used the outdoor environment to unleash his creativity on paper without any fear of making mistakes. Meanwhile, the heir watched the strokes closely to understand the passion put into every movement of the brush. As the seasons passed, the intensive training didn't stop for a single day. From sunrise to sunset, the duo's brutal dedication turned that setting into a true field of evolution. On nights of pure exhaustion, HWI would even cover his tired partner, showing a respect that went way beyond the master-servant relationship. Taking advantage of the guy passing out on the study desk, the master analyzes the latest sketch left by him. Holding the paper carefully, he notices the immense evolution the boy's paintings have achieved over time. Looking at the scenery outside, the heir feels ready to apply all that knowledge to his own art. Confidence overflows in his eyes, knowing he has finally found the path to overcome his limitations. 4 intense years of preparation pass, and the day of the Huang family's great trial finally arrives. The patriarch watches everything from a privileged seat, making it clear that today's demonstration is a decisive event. The result of this challenge in the center of the courtyard will determine if the heir keeps his title or loses everything for good. The old clan elders watch the tense walk with great expectation and judging eyes. The atmosphere in the immense pavilion is so heavy that no one dares to make a peep during the presentation. Hidden in the audience, the servant breaks into a cold sweat from nervousness, as it's his first time seeing his partner's art in real action. Crossing his fingers, he mentally cheers for all those years of secret help to have been worth it. In the center of the arena, HWI takes his stance, wielding the brush flawlessly. The MC can barely blink, curious to see what kind of art the master managed to complete with his ideas. With a firm and precise movement, the heir swings the large weapon, throwing the ink's energy through the... In the blink of an eye, an absurd torrent of magical water cuts through the scene, leaving everyone absolutely perplexed by the fluidity of the strike. Continuing the demonstration, HWI swings his giant brush and summons a storm of magical water through the pavilion. The elders in the stands are amazed and ask if that is really the young master's art. Gripping his weapon firmly, the heir maintains a confident posture while the energy flows around him. One of the clan leaders praises the demonstration, finding it incredible that he shows such mastery at this age. The guy's old master watches everything completely awestruck. Then the heir creates dark vortexes in the air, drawing more praise about the magnificence of that technique. One of the old men asks if this is the result of a great teacher, congratulating the responsible master right after. However, the tutor swallows hard, totally honored, but internally wonders when the boy mastered something like that. Watching everything in hiding, Muyong follows the movements without blinking. Suddenly, the servant's eyes widen in shock as he recognizes the strokes in the air. The technique of the white moon cloud flow takes shape in the arena. Right after, the crushing waves of the galaxy are also drawn to perfection. Trembling with anger and disappointment, the MC realizes that those are exactly the paintings he created himself. Very impressed, the patriarch confesses he has never seen anything so creative and asks where the inspiration came from. Acting with fake humility, HWI thanks him for the compliment and says his skills still leave something to be desired. Without an ounce of shame, the traitor states with conviction that all those works are his original creations. Totally devastated by the lie, the servant turns his back and walks away from there in silence. Night falls over the massive Huang family estate, bringing a heavy atmosphere. Locked in his cramped room, Muyong leans against the wall, trying to process what happened. The boy mutters in frustration, admitting he won't be able to catch a wink of sleep like this. He remembers the agreement and thought the master was only going to use the ideas as inspiration, never imagining a blatant copy. Lying on the floor, he tries to understand the reason for this, since the deal was to guarantee his freedom as soon as HWI became the leader. Those paintings represent the guy's entire life and his own identity as an artist. Setting his face with determination, he concludes he can't let anyone steal his works like that. Without wasting more time, the MC jumps up from the floor, determined to confront the heir right then and there. He advances with firm steps and grabs the door to the quarters. As soon as he steps out, he runs face to face with HWI himself, accompanied by henchmen in the hallway. Taking a huge scare from the surprise visit, the servant stutters the master's title. With a cold and calculating look, the heir just watches as his guard pulls the sword from its sheath. The MC steps back scared, not understanding why they're drawing a weapon on him. Maintaining a superior pose, HWI feigns disappointment, saying he valued the boy too much for him to commit such a serious crime. The heir coldly accuses him of trying to steal the secret arts from the family's young master. Completely shocked by the audacity, the MC hears his final punishment sentence being declared right there. Under the direct order to finish him off, the guard lunges, delivering a quick sword strike. Muyong tries to back away in time but ends up getting hit and lets out a cry of pain. Fallen on the wooden floor, the guy demands to know the meaning of this and questions what exactly he allegedly stole. Holding the scrolls in his hands, the fraud mocks the situation, saying he already knew his ally was going to play innocent. Before he can react, the servant takes a kick to the chest and is thrown to the floor. The scattered works prove HY's point, who judges it absurd for a prisoner to practice art and even copy the leader. The boy brings his hand to the wound on his face, while being called insolent by his former partner. Consumed by immense fury, he pronounces the liar's full name in a threatening tone. Looking at the paper with contempt, the master listens to the guy ask if this was the plan from the start. The servant deduces that he was used this whole time just to secure the faction leadership position for the noble. Gritting his teeth in pure rage, Muyong rants that this is all a huge absurdity. He defends tooth and nail that those paintings on the floor are his life's work. Outraged, the boy shouts that even if he is the new clan leader, he doesn't have the right to steal what belongs to him. The heir narrows his eyes with disdain and calls him shameless to the end. Buying into the fight, the guard jumps at the boy, cursing his audacity to speak to the master like that. In a quick survival reflex, the MC grabs a sturdy brush lying on the floor. Taking advantage of the opening, he uses the improvised object to block the heavy blade attack. The two test their strength up close, while the henchman continues to harass the injured guy. With an agile move, Muyong manages to push the enemy's sword away using his wooden weapon. With that, the rest of the guard charges down the hallway with clear orders to grab him. Having no way to face everyone at once, the servant gains momentum and throws himself straight through the window. He crashes through the paper doors, landing awkwardly on the outside balcony. Breathing heavily from the pain of the impact, the guy tries to quickly compose himself on the ledge. He looks back and notices the dangerous approach of his armed pursuers. A sword comes down, slicing the air and shattering the railing right next to his face. The guard orders him to surrender now, while HWI taunts, asking if the useless guy has the guts to jump from that height. Cornered on the edge, Muyong tries to convince himself not to feel fear now. Gripping the structure tightly, he concludes he simply can't surrender there. Making the riskiest decision of his life, the boy leaps into the void, refusing to be defeated like that. The fall is brutal and he hits the lower roof with a violent thud, letting out a muffled cry of agony. Watching from above, the guards curse the fugitive's madness and decide to head down the stairs after him. Sprawled on the stone floor, the servant tries to turn over while holding his injured shoulder. Bleeding heavily, he understands he has no time to rest and needs to flee immediately. Pushing his body's absolute limits, Muyong stumbles to his feet, forcing his legs to move. From the top of the pavilion, HWI just watches the silhouette of his ex-partner disappearing into the darkness. The clan's new leader maintains an icy expression, showing not an ounce of remorse for the betrayal. Far from there, the MC plunges into the dense forest, seeking shelter in the dark night. He runs desperately through the trees, panting and feeling the weight of all his injuries. Due to the rush, his bare foot ends up stepping wrong on a dry branch in the path. Losing his balance instantly, the guy trips and is thrown forward defenseless. He hits the dirt floor hard, coughing heavily and feeling the pain take over everything. Thrown in the middle of the brush, his heart freezes when he hears the voices of the henchmen claiming the noise came from that direction. Fallen in the dark forest, the MC trembles with fear and begs internally not to meet his end in such a useless way. Gathering his last bit of strength, he stumbles up, feeling he needs to escape that place no matter what. Even badly hurt, Muyong runs desperately aimlessly through the woods, just wanting to get away from the danger. The frantic escape leads him straight to a rocky slope right next to a violent river. At that moment, the two clan henchmen manage to catch up to him and watch him with a lot of mockery. Harassing the guy, the guards ironically ask why he doesn't try jumping again since he did it so well before. Crossing their swords threateningly, they warn that it's all over and tell the boy to give up once and for all. Totally cornered, the servant breathes with great difficulty, feeling the weight of that extreme situation. Faced with the threat, he leans on the ground and grabs his own painting brush that had fallen near him. With the improvised weapon in hand, Muyong gets into a defensive stance, refusing to throw in the towel easily. Trying to stay calm in the midst of the chaos, the injured guy lets out a long sigh to focus his mind. Suddenly, an old memory surfaces, showing his days of intense training in the mountains. In that memory, a white-haired female master was teaching the boy to take a deep breath and hold the accumulated energy in the center of his body. The tutor patiently explained that he needed to guide this internal force directly through his arm. Following the strict instructions, the young apprentice focused intensely to gather all the power at the tip of his brush. Her voice resonated in his mind, telling him to circulate the energy while visualizing the art very clearly. Applying the technique perfectly, the boy managed to materialize an ink bird in the air and was completely amazed. Overcome with absurd joy, he raised his arms, cheering loudly for finally mastering the move. Without wasting time, the apprentice ran toward the master to share that huge personal victory. Full of gratitude, the MC thanked her deeply for teaching such advanced methods to a simple prisoner. Hearing this, the tutor explained she chose this practical path because it's very hard to learn energy flow just by looking at paper. Back to the present, Muyong focuses his resentful gaze as he remembers the traitor Hwi directly. Kneeling before danger, he admits that following that fake friend without noticing his bad intentions was the biggest mistake of his life. Holding the brush firmly, the guy concludes that the ex-partner is also nothing but a fraud. With his posture renewed by determination, he stands up ready for combat, leaving the henchman quite confused. One of the guards bursts into laughter and mocks the harmless weapon, asking what he plans to do with a training brush. Ignoring the taunts, the MC makes a quick and fluid movement, remembering that this tool opened his paths in martial arts. Maintaining absolute focus and a sharp look, he mentally invokes the piercing strike of the black pine branch. Immediately, thick roots of dark ink erupt, tearing through the stone floor with great violence. The sudden attack catches the two pursuers completely by surprise, shattering their arrogant confidence right then. Following the explosion of the attack, the boy warns that underestimating his power was the worst choice they could have made. The massive energy of the art spreads across the scene, forcing the adversaries to retreat quickly to avoid being crushed. Startled by the power of the strike, one of the henchmen confesses he had no idea the target possessed such a high level. The partner agrees, terrified, and orders the use of spiritual brushes, realizing that regular blades wouldn't be enough there. Feeling his pride hurt, the swordsman draws his magical tool, muttering that it's a huge humiliation to resort to this against a servant. Without hesitation, he swings his arm, executing an agile movement A glowing formation appears from the tip of the weapon, as the enemy invokes the circular technique of the shimmering star. Soon a blast of luminous and cutting energy is fired at extremely high speed toward the boy. The impact of the blinding light hits the MC head-on, forcing him to cover his aching face. Even dazed, he analyzes the situation, remembering that the essence of that technique is exactly to blind the opponent with the intense glare. Using his brain, Muyong deduces that the attackers will charge with everything as soon as they think he has no vision. Anticipating the move, he quickly ducks and draws a line on the ground to activate the ink flow technique. As soon as the henchmen go for the direct attack, a massive and violent black wave rises like an impassable barrier. The magical torrent swallows the two warriors at once, making them scream in despair as they are dragged away. Unable to defend against the absurd impact, one of the aggressors is launched straight into the dark abyss of the mountain. The silence right after the attack puts the guy on alert, as he quickly realizes he only heard one scream of a fall. Then the surviving henchman strikes from above like lightning, landing a brutal blow and catching the boy totally off guard. Sinking the blade into the target's shoulder, the warrior rants furiously, accusing the servant of stealing the arts and taking down a family member. Consumed by hatred, the adversary raises the sword again, promising to destroy the guy's right arm to ruin his painting. Feeling an excruciating pain, the MC tries to fight the block, wanting to use his next technique at all costs. However, when trying to channel his internal force, his eyes lose focus and the energy simply fails mid-process. Taking advantage of the vulnerability, the henchman follows up with a heavy attack that throws the artist hard against the rocky floor. The violent fall rips a desperate scream from the young man, who ends up sprawled under the light rain. Standing before the defeated body, the aggressor mocks the boy's stupidity for exhausting his entire reserve by launching massive attacks without thinking. With his face stained by the wounds, Muyong grits his teeth in frustration, realizing his stamina really has run out. The scene turns grim as the warrior corners his victim right on the edge of the dangerous stone cliff. Looking at the boy's pitiful state, the man admits he didn't expect to have so much trouble finishing him off. In a rare moment of sincerity, the henchman acknowledges that the guy's talent would be very famous if he hadn't been born a mere prisoner. Hearing this, the injured MC just lets out a weak, mocking laugh as he spits on the ground. The unexpected reaction deeply irritates the guard, who asks if the kid has lost his mind facing his own end like that. Letting out a genuine laugh, the servant finds it hilarious that such terrible enemies are impressed, and even jokes about offering a disciple spot if he is spared. The audacity of the comment makes the swordsman's face contort with pure fury over the lack of respect. Yelling that he will tear the target to pieces, the warrior charges with everything but ends up taking a kick right in the middle of the chest. With extreme agility, the boy's foot lands the precise strike, using his soul to create a strong leverage. Taking advantage of the mechanical momentum of the impact, Muyong voluntarily throws himself backward toward the void of the canyon. The unexpected counterattack destabilizes the henchman, who ends up stumbling forward, losing his balance completely. Already in free fall, the boy flashes a sly smile and curses the aggressor, reminding him of the basic rule to never lower your guard. In a desperate act, the guard quickly reaches out and manages to grab the leg of the fugitive's pants. However, the fabric tears easily with the weight, leaving the attacker empty-handed and with a shocked face. With nothing to hold him, the young man plummets quickly toward the violent current at the bottom of the dark crevice. Feeling the wind cut his bruised face, he lets out a soft sigh, accepting the situation. While being swallowed by the vastness of the dangerous landscape, the boy wonders if this is really how his journey ends. Time moves forward, showing the sun illuminating a peaceful and stunning scenery on the calm banks of the rocky river. Washed up on the wet dirt, the MC survives the ordeal and coughs up a lot of water, trying to empty his lungs. Opening his eyes slowly, he groans in pain, revealing he is tied up by a thick rope while trying to understand where he ended up. The tip of a wooden staff pokes something dumped on the rocks. A mysterious man stops before the sprawled body on the riverbank and grumbles that he spent a good amount of time looking for the kid. Poking the MC with the staff, the stranger wonders if he ended up fishing out a goner and asks how far he was dragged. Then, a noise of something thrashing in the water catches the man's attention amidst all that confusion. He turns toward the sound and finally finds the prey he was hunting. Very excited and blindfolded, the old man celebrates finding his prize. By the sound of the splashing, he bets the fish is enormous. Super pumped, the guy already imagines the perfect feast, mixing roasted fish with a good bamboo drink. However, he ends up tripping over Muyong's body. Confused, he pokes the guy, thinking it's just a pile of wet rags. The boy opens his eyes with difficulty and calls out to the sir as he feels the staff hit his bruised face. Taking a huge scare, the man jumps back and yells, asking why on earth there is a passed-out guy there. Fallen on the rocks and totally drained of strength, the MC tries to get the stranger's attention. With a very weak voice, he begs pleas for the old man to give him a little food to survive. The stranger gets indignant and snaps, asking if the kid wants to steal his provisions, claiming he barely has enough for himself. Gathering his last bits of strength, the boy promises to pay double or even 10 times more in the future. He declares he can't go out like this, as he still needs to carry out his great vengeance against the Huang family. Hearing that familiar name, the blindfolded old man completely changes his posture and is quite surprised by the statement. He tells the boy to wake up right then, wanting to know much more about this story. Silence takes over the place, and the man asks worriedly if the kid ended up kicking the bucket. Already inside a rustic cabin, a delicious smell of roasted fish fills the Holding the food close to the guy's face, the savior grumbles that not even that incredible aroma was enough to wake him up. Just then Muyong opens his eyes calling for the sir and ends up giving the homeowner a tremendous. The old man composes himself and says he managed to stop the bleeding, telling the patient to eat quickly because the danger hasn't passed yet. Very grateful for the help, the boy apologizes and asks if the man can put the food in his mouth, since his arms are too injured. Without an ounce of patience, the stranger complains that the kid is too demanding and shoves the fish right into his face. With his mouth force-fed, the MC can barely complain about the totally rough treatment. He tries to chew the meal however he can, fighting against the pain in his whole body. The hunger is so intense that the young man swallows the fish desperately to recover his energy. Watching from afar, the old man finds the scene funny and asks if the taste is really that good. Transitioning to a serious topic, the man asks if the guy suffered a great injustice at the hands of the Thousand Brilliance H-Wang clan. Swallowing hard, the MC confirms the suspicion with a look full of resentment. The man lets out a sarcastic laugh and concludes that the two have a lot in common. He reveals that he also harbors a deep hatred for that family for leaving him without his vision. Getting up from the bench, the old man tells the boy to spill his version right away to know what kind of dirty tricks those scoundrels pulled this time. Time passes in the small cabin as the guy reports in detail all the betrayal he suffered. Listening to everything, the elderly man shouts in anger, cursing the wretched faction in a totally explosive way. Throwing his hands in the air, he finds it absurd that the orthodox faction leaders would steal the art of a humble servant. The MC watches the old man chug the bottle of liquor and asks if the family already had this dirty history. Wiping his mouth, the man warns that if he were to list the bad things they've already done, they would be there all year. In his view, the clan is pure rotten on the inside. Banging his staff on the floor out of pure frustration, he laments losing the only chance to crush those fakes in the past. With an intense expression, the old man recalls that he is talking about the great rookie tournament of the painting forest 19 years ago. Back then, the event gathered all the great prospects from both sides of the martial world in a giant arena. Flaunting his glorious past, the former fighter boasts, claiming that no orthodox genius was capable of going toe-to-toe with the peak of the unorthodox faction. Amazed by the story, Muyong asks if he was really that strong of a master and asks to know his name. Taking on an arrogant air, the savior says that in the martial world everyone knew him by a title of massive weight. The boy listens closely as he introduces himself as the great boundaryless heaven destroyer. With a totally blank face, the guy replies bluntly that he has never heard of that title in his life. Feeling his pride hurt, the old man smacks the boy on the head, cursing his insolence. Grabbing the kid by the collar, he yells that anyone in the world knows his legend, forcing the young man to apologize for the huge blunder. Calmer now, the master explains that he was winning all the fights in the tournament, until crossing paths with a coward from the H-Wang family. Despite having the direct advantage in combat, he ended up falling for a mysterious spell that sealed part of his internal energy. With a sad face, the veteran reveals that the rival, not satisfied, even tore away his vision forever. Totally shocked by the account, Muyong finds it absurd that they would destroy an artist's life without facing any consequences. The old man explains that complaining did no good, because the family covered it all up as if it were a normal dueling accident. In a very bitter tone, he says that's just how the world works. If the powerful are in charge, the truth simply molds to them. A heavy memory hits the MC's mind, bringing the false accusation of theft back to the surface. He recalls the cold words of the elders, accusing him of copying the unique style of the family's young leader. The superior look full of contempt from those people still burns alive inside his memory. Snapping back to reality, the boy clenches his own fists with all his might, feeling the revolt explode in his body. The old man gives a resigned laugh and advises the kid to just accept his fate quietly and drown his sorrows in a drink. With a firm and unshakable posture, the guy refuses the advice immediately. With a fiery look in his eyes, the MC decrees that someone needs to stand up and rub it in their faces that this is completely wrong. Surprising the old man, the boy throws himself on the wooden floor, assuming a position of reverence and total submission. He begs from the bottom of his soul to be accepted as the newest disciple of the great heaven-destroying hero. Raising his head, he promises that he will use the power to end the empire of the darned H-Wang clan once and for all. The old man questions with disdain how the injured kid plans to pull off this absolute miracle. Muyong points out that the famous rookie tournament will happen again next year. Staring at the floor, he guarantees he will enter the competition and surpass the traitorous leader in front of the whole world. Being very realistic, the boy confesses knowing that willpower is nothing without power, which is why he needs a master to help him grow. The man listens to the grand declaration of war in absolute silence from the shadows. Suddenly, he breaks the heavy mood by letting out a laugh of pure mockery. Turning his back and grabbing his hatchet, the savior announces he's going to chop wood and tells the guy to get out of there forever. Looking out of the corner of his eye, he reinforces that the H-Wang family has never known defeat in history. The former fighter argues that the enemies have the best materials in the world, making it impossible to surpass their blessed energy level. The boy listens to the warning that the rich use any dirty political trick if they are close to losing, advising him to forget about revenge right away. Ending the heavy topic, the old man shuts the door on his hopes and leaves the guy alone to deal with the frustration. Tossed on the cabin floor, Muyong begs one more time for the blind old man to accept him as his grand disciple. Without an ounce of patience, the man complains that the boy is too stubborn, reminding him that he is free now and should just live his own life far away from there. Rejecting the idea instantly, the guy bangs his head on the wooden floor and screams that this isn't enough for him. The young man explains that his true reason for entering the martial world was to perfect his art and leave his own mark on history. Bringing the arrogant figure of Hwang Hwi to memory, he swears to prove to the world that the traitor was completely wrong for stealing his dream. Facing the kid's determination, the old man coldly warns that he will end up losing his life trying to do that. At that, the former prisoner clenches his bruised fist with all his repressed strength. Taken by revolt, he declares he would rather fight to the limit than hide and swallow all that resentment in silence. Raising his face with great conviction, he makes it crystal clear that he doesn't mind meeting his end while pursuing this vengeance. Caught by surprise by the intensity of the words, the former master feels something different in the air. A strong golden energy emanates from the boy, leaving the old man impressed that a simple kid could release such an extraordinary aura just by making a vow. Even noticing that the guy's internal power is quite pathetic, he begins to wonder if the youth really harbors some hidden talent. Determined to check the situation up close, the man approaches the kneeling boy and comments on the severe injuries on both of his arms. A bit confused by the change of subject, Muyong just confirms that he got pretty banged up during the escape. The damage to the guy's body is deep, directly affecting his entire bone structure and making any movement difficult. Analyzing the damage, the veteran notes that the right shoulder was pierced from behind, while the left is totally dislocated. The master tells the boy to endure the pain, leaving the youth completely confused by the sudden warning. Without wasting time, the old man yanks the injured arm all at once, ripping out a scream of agony in the middle of the rough fix. Massaging the spot, the boy calls him master, questioning the aggressiveness, but gets a scolding for being so dramatic and hears that he still hasn't been accepted as a disciple. Head down, the guy asks what he could possibly do in training with his whole body wrecked like that. Being practical, the man replies that the first step is to heal the kid, so he can at least function like a normal human being. Night falls silently over the remote mountainous region. Using his advanced skills, the former fighter places his hand on the boy's back to transfer his own healing energy. Due to the extreme exhaustion of the past few days, the MC ends up passing out from sleep sitting right there during the long procedure. The energy flowing through the battered body ensures that the recovery proceeds quite smoothly and efficiently. However, the master notices a weird anomaly in the guy's head, realizing the healing force is going up instead of down like normal. It seems like the youth's mind is desperately sucking in all the power being channeled into him. Finding the phenomenon fascinating, the veteran gets quite excited, realizing he has stumbled upon something very interesting. Soon the dawn illuminates the cabin's porch, bringing a new day of possibilities. Totally recovered and brimming with energy, Muyong throws a few punches in the air, calling the veteran master and asking what the first challenge will be. The old man's response comes in the form of a solid knock on the kid's head, reminding him he still hasn't been accepted as a student. Telling the youth to get ready, the man tosses an object at him with great agility. Catching the tool in the air, the former prisoner inspects the item and wonders if it's a real spiritual brush. The veteran explains he needs to test if all the guy's determination is a diamond in the rough, or just an empty shell. To pull off the miracle of overcoming the enemy faction, he warns the boy will need genius talent and relentless courage, proposing two crucial tests. Holding his liquor bottle, the old man announces that the first test to prove genius simply consists of breaking that canteen. Evaluating the rules, Muyong asks if he can use any painting art or trick to achieve the goal. The master laughs at the audacity, stating that if a brat can break his gourd, it would mean overcoming a 20-year gap in internal power. Relaxed about the situation, the man brings the bottle to his mouth to take a good swig of his wine. With total mockery, he decrees that the test's time limit ends as soon as all the drink in the container runs dry. Without wasting a second, the MC charges full speed, kicking up dust from the dirt ground. Using the brush quickly, he conjures a sharp wooden branch spear and fires it straight at the target. The old man dodges with absurd ease and praises the boy's decision to skip the formal painting greetings to attack directly. The youth doesn't let it slide and argues it's the master's own fault for starting to chug the wine early. Riding the momentum of the advance, Muyong takes a huge leap through the air, preparing his next assault. Splitting the flow of magical ink, the guy creates a coordinated attack coming from both sides to corner the target. Noticing the maneuver, the master concludes the boy has been poking around in many of the Hwang family's secret manuals to modify the arts like that. Closing off any escape route, the disciple candidate advances with total focus on destroying the bottle. A strong blast of black ink is fired in a fierce and relentless charge. Amused by the situation, the veteran calls the kid a fool for thinking he could land a direct hit just because he's blind. The MC clicks his tongue in total frustration as he watches his grand strike pierce the wind without touching a thing. Playing with the boy, the man takes sips of wine, while dodging an absurd sequence of attacks without the slightest effort. On the third gulp of the drink, the old man dodges a powerful aerial kick with a light and highly elegant movement. Landing on the ground, the guy is perplexed, wanting to understand how the opponent manages to escape everything and even doubts his blindness. Soon it clicks, and he understands the experienced fighter would have no reason to invent such a lie to a stranger. Faced with the target's super-confident stance, Muyon deduces he must be using some other sharpened sense to perceive the world around him. Following the logic, the youth remembers the old man noticed the ink flow blocking his rear without even needing to turn his head. The veteran's relaxed expression only confirms the kid is facing a true martial arts genius. Focusing on the opponent's sharp hearing, the candidate concludes the sound of the movements is the main culprit giving away his position. Completely changing his strategy, the boy summons the needles of the wind flow in a fast and incredibly silent movement. The tactic now is to gather the wind-based energy very subtly so as not to make any unwanted noise. Planning the perfect strike, the idea is to condense the cutting attack only in the exact millisecond he gets close to the old man. The goal is to pierce the wine gourd with a single, silent, stealthy shot straight at the target. However, the youth gets a huge scare seeing the master step out of the way of the strike with the utmost calm. Shaking the container, the veteran taunts, warning that the liquid is already running low and the test is about to end. Outraged by the surreal dodge, the boy yells, asking how the old man manages to avoid the attacks as if he notices absolutely everything. The question itself makes the MC freeze for a moment upon noticing a very important detail in the enemy's movement. Putting the pieces together in his head, a theory emerges that the experienced fighter can visualize the exact shape of the painting art's energy flowing through the air. The guy admits he still doesn't understand the method behind this skill, but he is certain this is the answer to the perfect defense. Determined to test his own theory, the youth prepares for another assault, guaranteeing the master won't escape so easily this time. An aura of intense energy begins to glow brightly at the tip of his brush. Pushing his body to the extreme limit, the guy tries to release all his power at once, feeling his own head crackle with pressure. Unfortunately, the energy fails mid-process and Muyon collapses on the dirt ground, cursing his own weakness. Watching the fall, the man comments that the kid's physical technique and internal power are pathetic, and warns him not to blame the old injuries for the failure. Being quite honest, the old man makes it clear he healed the kid's body to leave it in perfect condition, proving that the humiliating collapse is simply his true limit. Sprawled on the ground, the MC quickly scrapes a stone in the dirt, focusing all his energy. Using the object as a weapon, he hurls the stone full force at the adversary. The old man casually blocks the attack using his own liquor gourd, looking slightly impressed by the attitude. Excited, the boy cheers, shouting that his theory about the fight was totally right all along. The guy deduces the master can only perfectly see attacks that involve magical painting art. With this, the former prisoner notes internally that until now he had only attacked using his brush directly. Without wasting time, Muyon decides to go for hand-to-hand combat, believing this way he'll break through the old man's defense. However, the master intercepts the charge with absurd ease and grabs both of the boy's arms at once. The veteran tells the kid to think twice before trying something so incredibly stupid. Right after, he lands a heavy knee straight into the unprotected youth's stomach. Suffering greatly from the direct impact, the boy collapses to his knees out of breath and coughing hard. The man laughs at the situation and sarcastically asks if the kid only read the manuals from the Huang family's library, calling him ignorant about the real martial world. Explaining the mystery, the veteran reveals that some fighters at his level possess a very rare technique called the mind's eye. He confesses he avoids using the power because it drains a lot of internal strength, but warns the ability allows him to see way beyond the ink in the air. To prove his point, the master demonstrates being able to detailfully visualize the entire flow and energy paths circulating inside the opponent's body. Completely shocked, Muyon understands that this is exactly how all his moves were predicted in advance. The master warns that, thanks to this advanced reading, he can perfectly perceive that the youth is prepping a new magical attack from behind. Trembling from exhaustion, the boy hears the severe warning that trying to force more power will result in a tragic end from energy deviation. Even battered and breaking into a cold sweat, the former prisoner reinforces the promise he had made to himself. Raising the brush with pure willpower, the guy swears to fight to the bitter end and summons the ascending rock attack. A violent stone pillar erupts from the ground right beneath the veteran's feet. Escaping through the air, the man lets out a long sigh and curses the kid's absurd stubbornness in wanting to lose his own life. Capitalizing on the momentum, the MC focuses all his remaining attention, believing this is his final chance at victory. A massive magical torrent descends from the heavens, instantly recognized by the old man as the famous explosive water strike. Landing softly on the tip of the pillar, the master mocks, saying such a predictable and basic move would never work on him. The energy of the heavy technique hits the earth, raising a curtain of destruction right in front of the blind fighter. Realizing the danger of the boy's critical condition, the man decides to end the dispute right then before the worst happens. However, the veteran hesitates mid-charge and lets out a sound of surprise upon noticing something very weird. The foam generated by the shattered water on the ground begins to mix and take on a very dark color. The experienced martial artist is completely bewildered to find that the residue from the water attack is taking on a new structural shape. Confident, the MC gives a clever smile and reveals that this is a brand new technique created by himself. Linking the move, countless spears shaped like black branches emerge, tearing up the ground straight at the target. The old man manages to react quickly and block the dangerous assault, but ends up having his sleeve fabric cut by the magic. Analyzing the plot twist, the master recalls that the basic principle of martial arts is to materialize a single fixed concept at a time. With this, he understands that the boy imagined branches growing out of a waterfall, fusing the two fundamentals into a new and brilliant art. Faced with this genius discovery, the veteran's face is taken over by a huge and sincere smile of excitement. Very proud, the fighter praises the guy, calling him a true painting prodigy. Suddenly, Muyong lets out a terrible scream of pain and collapses to the floor, completely losing control of his body. The master rushes over frantically, recognizing immediately that the youth is suffering a fatal power deviation. Kneeling and feeling a crushing agony in his head, the boy gets scolded by the man for going way past his limits. Without hesitation, the veteran touches the apprentice's chest, aiming to calm the magical whirlwind before it destroys his mind. Surprisingly, a dense shadowy energy wraps around the man's arm, causing a huge shock. In a matter of milliseconds, the old man is relentlessly dragged into a dark and turbulent void. Floating in that hostile space, the experienced fighter tries to understand where on earth he was taken. Totally cornered by roots of pure black ink, he looks for some logic amidst all that weirdness. Trapped by the terrifying shadows, the veteran realizes the strange place is draining all his internal strength very fast. With his eyes focused, he uses all his sharpened perception to read the oppressive atmosphere. A quick memory crosses his mind, bringing back the recollection of when he tried to heal the boy the day before. Putting the clues together, he concludes his consciousness was swallowed directly into the apprentice's upper center, the core responsible for imagination. Letting out a laugh of pure confidence, the man assures that he has no intention of giving in easily to that trap. Using his own overwhelming aura, he breaks the heavy black roots holding him all at once. Feeling the place's strong mental resistance, the master finds the injured boy's persistent stubbornness impressive. Changing his attitude, he considers the situation ideal, since the mind reveals the true creative quality of a great artist. Concentrating a strong red glow in his own hands, he decides to investigate if the former prisoner is really a talent beyond the curve. With a massive explosion of vibrant force, the fighter advances, declaring he is going to uncover the truth once and for all. As soon as the flash fades, the man observes the vastness of that chaotic world and lets out a tired sigh. The landscape reveals a turbulent sea of wild inks, quickly judged by him as a total structural disaster. The veteran deduces that breaking the limit completely scrambled the youth's will, creating a scenario on the brink of complete self-destruction. Despite all the risk involved, he confesses a huge curiosity about what drawing would form if he organized all that mess. Thinking about the previous attack, the old man knows that brilliant combination could only be born from an absurdly fertile imagination. Bracing himself for heavy lifting, the master rolls up his sleeves, radiating readiness. Flaunting a big smile on his face, he shows he's very pumped to start the big mental cleanup on the boy. The wise man reflects that to turn ideas into ink attacks, the body needs to burn its vital stock from the lower part. The MC's biggest weakness is his physical reserve, which is way too small to support such grandiose genius. Thus, he deduces that this massive imbalance caused the internal collapse, making the mind swallow outside power to stay alive. Taking advantage of this simple theory, the old man decides to use the kid's own magical desperation in his favor. Without any stalling, he begins to brutally inject all his vast martial experience into the chaotic area. An intense red storm dominates the dark space, forcing a connection between the two fighters. Feeling his body working at its limit, the man celebrates the success after finally syncing his own rhythm with the youth's confused will. With a totally fierce look, he mocks the roots thrashing around like a starving baby, guaranteeing that they could never overcome him. Focusing his essence to the max, the experienced warrior fires a beam of clean aura straight to the top. His grand strategy consists of untangling all that aggressive mass, separating each concept one by one. As the mess dissolves, the works start taking sharp forms, showing trees and webs through space. However, the real surprise hits him in the blink of an eye, leaving the blind fighter more amazed than ever. Completely awestruck by the majestic spectacle revealed in the air, the veteran pulls his hands back in a state of pure shock. Analyzing the mental mess, the master realizes he needs to be very careful not to end up getting sucked into that immense chaos. Without losing focus, he decides to start tidying up the place by pulling the larger structures scattered through the boy's mind. Using his red aura, the veteran tries to isolate the massive waves and the mountain ranges formed by the out-of-control ink. However, the resistance is absurd, and the fighter grumbles in frustration as he feels his own energy paths distorting with the brutal effort. Faced with the danger, he quickly backs off and decides to regulate his own breathing to avoid suffering any severe internal damage. As he calms down, the warrior's mind takes him to a vast peaceful field where he can reflect with much more clarity. He breathes out heavily, trying to recover his body's total balance after the magical shock. Assessing the situation with a cool head, he concludes the size of the mess and the order of things aren't the main issue there. The old man discards the idea of lacking enough internal strength, since the main obstacle has nothing to do with the raw amount of power. Staring at the connection, he remembers that is Muyong's own energy center, so all the answers must be directly tied to the youth. An image of the focused boy passionate about his art crosses the experienced master's mind, illuminating his path. With that, the fighter recalls the kid's proud claim, stating he created that mixture of techniques all on his own. A wide smile takes over the veteran's face as he finally understands the great secret behind all that magical confusion. Quite excited, he stretches out his glowing hand, confirming he found the perfect solution to save his new apprentice. Releasing a gigantic burst of pink energy, the master declares that trying to separate the concepts of the technique was a mistake from the start. He realizes that the two distinct elements created by the guy were already born perfectly fused into a single, complex work of art. At that, the veteran judges his own stupidity for trying to divide something that was unique, being impressed by the amount of brilliant mixtures scattered around. Completely thrilled, the fighter yells that this display of creativity is far from being just a lucky strike. The man's aura explodes with full force as he challenges the boy to show everything he truly hides inside. As soon as the mental fog clears, the experienced warrior's jaw drops at the spectacular vision shining above him. The boy's energy center takes the shape of a gigantic and magnificent cosmic whirlpool mixed with shadowy branches. Analyzing the piece closely, the master admits the execution of the strokes still needs a lot of practice, but the concepts are absurdly brilliant. The old man is amazed to see that vibrant whirlpool as proof that the kid keeps creating art even while unconscious. Letting out a laugh of pure admiration, the veteran jokes that the guy's mind is a true idea devourer that creates as easily as it breathes. Outside the mental trance, the former prisoner remains passed out on the stone floor, finally free from mortal danger. Time advances and the sky takes on orange hues, announcing a new peaceful late afternoon in the isolated mountain ridge. Slowly waking back up to the real world, Muyong sits up and calls for the master, wanting to know if he is awake yet. Suddenly, the boy gets a huge scare, realizing the coveted wine canteen is right there in his own hands. Watching his reaction from afar, the blind old man just congratulates the kid on passing the crazy test. Overcome with indescribable joy, the MC shouts at the top of his lungs, wanting to confirm if he really managed to complete the big challenge. Keeping his cool, the veteran acknowledges the guy's immense talent, who jumps for joy celebrating his huge personal victory. Full of energy, the youth demands to know when the second challenge will begin, reminding him the master promised to test his courage as well. Drinking calmly, the fighter warns that the next trial is already happening, leaving the former prisoner without understanding absolutely anything. The old man takes on a very serious tone and explains that overcoming such a gigantic power gap in just 1 year requires an abnormal amount of determination. Reinforcing the weight of the path, he warns this sacrifice will last intensely until the day the traitor Hwang Hwi is totally crushed. With the words hanging heavy in the air, the experienced warrior decrees that every little moment from now on will be a vital test for the boy's survival. Staring firmly at the apprentice, the master asks directly if he is truly willing to embrace this living hell. Hearing the dangerous proposal, a very confident smile appears on the bruised face of the young artist. Without an ounce of hesitation in his eyes, Muyong declares with strong conviction that he gladly accepts the challenge. Satisfied with the quick answer, the veteran approves of his attitude while the guy bows deeply to the ground in a sign of absolute respect to his new lord. Getting straight to business, the mentor smiles and reveals that the first grand objective of this tough journey is to get a top-tier spiritual pill. He explains that the boy's genius mind has grown so much that his physical body simply can no longer handle storing all that absurd magical load. To skip entire years of slow and boring training, the master suggests using the rare item to take a massive leap in energy all at once. Highly focused on the mission, the new disciple agrees with the plan and quickly asks where they can find such a valuable treasure. The old man reveals that the leader of a famous information pavilion in the martial world is an old friend who can help them with the search. By meeting this powerful contact, the boy will get free access to the secrets regarding the exact whereabouts of the spiritual medicine. As the last rays of the sun disappear on the horizon, the duo agrees to head out right at dawn to avoid losing any travel time. The next morning, the MC splashes cold water on his face directly from the fast mountain river waters. Washing the dirt off his skin, the youth takes a deep breath, feeling the weight of his new reality falling on his shoulders. Clenching his fists tightly, the boy celebrates internally for finally seizing his big chance to change his life. While the current glides smoothly over the rocks, the guy holds a sharp blade, preparing his next decisive move. Staring at his own blurry reflection in the crystal-clear water, the young artist reflects on everything he had to go through just to make it there alive. A bitter memory invades his mind, remembering the exact instant he had to throw himself off the cliff so he wouldn't be annihilated. Gritting his teeth in pure rage, he makes a promise that he will never again have to run away like a cornered animal as he did in the past. With a firm movement, the guy brings the small knife near his face, taking on a totally renewed stance. Without looking back, Muyong cuts off his long hair, leaving behind his old identity as a docile servant. Far away from there, in the luxurious hall of the Huang family, a kneeling guard listens to the patriarch question if the fugitive really lost his life in the fall. Trembling on the cold floor, the lackey tries to justify himself, ensuring it is impossible for anyone to survive an abyss of that enormous height. Facing his subordinate's incompetence, Lord Huang Hwi ironically asks how the attacker had the nerve to come back alive after failing. Caught completely off guard by the threatening tone, the henchman swallows hard, breaking a cold sweat over the terrible fate awaiting him. Sitting on his imposing throne, the Orthodox faction's fake leader displays an attitude of absolute control over the situation. Tapping his fingers on the armrest, the traitor warns he will consider the target alive until they rub his lifeless body right in his face. Knowing it is better to obey without questioning, the henchman leaves the massive hall very swiftly and cautiously. Continuing the hunt, the young lord coldly orders wanted posters with a bounty to be spread all over the world looking for the former prisoner. Back on the riverbank, the old torn servant clothes are left on the rocks, marking the end of an era of suffering. Running his hand through his short hair, the MC feels the freshness of the change and breathes a sigh of relief with his new, intimidating appearance. Staring at the new version of himself reflected in the clear waters, he realizes he no longer wears the expression of a nobleman's doormat. Far away, the sadistic Huang heir flashes a wicked smile, guaranteeing his prey has nowhere to hide from the clan's justice. Flaunting a fierce look, the former servant internally hears the enemy's promise, swearing he will never escape the family's wrath. The sun rises bright, lighting up the beautiful mountains and announcing the beginning of the long journey of vengeance and hard training. Standing in the middle of the dirt road, the old veteran calmly asks if the new outfit fits the guy well. Carrying a heavy backpack, the boy thanks him for the help and confirms the adventure clothes are perfect. Satisfied with the visual result, the mentor flashes a friendly smile, confessing that was the only spare outfit he had left at home. Suddenly, the light mood changes drastically when the master raises his hand, giving off a dangerous, very aggressive red aura. Without giving time for any reaction, the veteran fires a massive blast of magic, catching his new disciple completely by surprise. The strong red magic blast fired by the master tears through the scenery with a violent boom, clearing a path straight into the forest. Casually pointing to the destruction, the veteran says they should go that way, leaving Muyong completely confused by the attitude. Soon the two begin their long hike up the sunny mountain, with the excited boy agreeing that the journey has just begun. As they push forward, the lush green setting changes into a rocky and very steep valley that demands a lot of attention. Carrying all the weight in the luggage, the new disciple tells the old man to watch his step carefully since the path is quite rugged. Shortly after, the master sits down on a rock, complaining that all this hiking is doing him in. Acting totally entitled, the experienced fighter decrees he would need to travel in the comfort of a carriage. Hearing this absurd demand in the middle of nowhere, the boy is baffled, not knowing how to solve the problem. Then, a foot pushes off the stone ground with great force to start a heavy jump. Obeying the order, Muyong ends up becoming the official transport and carries the veteran on his back as he climbs the cliff with difficulty. The old man complains that at this slow pace they won't arrive in a month, while the guy accuses him of picking the hard route on purpose just to get a free ride. As punishment for his cheekiness, the master gives the kid a good smack on the head, who panics, saying he's slipping. Justifying the physical discipline, the tutor yells that the youth has many battles ahead and needs to build up a decent stamina quickly. Tapping his staff on the boy's head to make him walk faster, the fighter tells him to stop whining, but the apprentice insists he's going to fall. Muyong's foot actually does step wrong on the slippery rock, totally losing traction on the tough climb. Completely exhausted, the boy drops the old man on the ground, asking for a break to catch his breath, while he hears he won't get paid a dime for being so slow. Already settled on the dirt, the mentor asks when they start walking again and gets the answer that they need to rest for an hour. Enjoying the break on the grass, the former prisoner hurriedly opens his backpack to grab his old materials. Holding his brush excitedly, he explains that looking at that massive cliff gave him a great idea, and he needs to paint it before he forgets. The veteran finds the situation amusing, impressed by how the guy can think about art even while suffering so much, proving he was born for this. Quickly changing his tone, the man builds suspense before giving his next warning to his disciple. With a swift movement, he swings his staff and lands a solid hit right on the distracted young apprentice's hands. Muyong drops his stuff completely confused, while the tutor asks how he would react to a sudden ambush like that. Without an ounce of pity, the blind man starts firing off rapid strikes with his cane, forcing the boy to defend himself in pure desperation. The wooden object is sent flying from the impact, and the old man warns that this is no place to be studying art theory. Keeping the pressure of the fight on, the experienced fighter asks if the kid knows what the most important skill is in a martial world duel. Trying to find the right answer, the youth guesses it might be internal energy, genius techniques, or even using rare materials. Capitalizing on the mental distraction, the master delivers a lightning-fast sweep trying to throw the opponent off balance without warning. The MC barely escapes by jumping back, but the adversary is already charging through the air with another relentless and very agile attack. Clenching his fist tightly, the veteran states that the real secret to everything is the footwork of whoever wields the brush. Gliding across the scene with impressive fluidity, the old man demonstrates how organic movement makes using magic in the arena much easier. Landing in front of the guy, he explains that a real fight isn't just about firing off your own power, but also blocking the enemy's attacks. Illustrating the danger of losing your weapon mid-fight, he warns that having grandiose art means nothing if the fighter gets defeated before using it. Convinced by the logic, the boy fully agrees and obeys the tutor's order to stand up at once to practice. Trying to copy the taught pose, the apprentice crouches awkwardly, earning a scolding from the veteran about that stance being way too stiff. With sunset approaching, the mentor demands the student pull his right leg back more to fix the balance of his martial stance. The harsh routine continues late into the night, with the guy walking slowly and maintaining his new stance with every dangerous step in the dark. Carrying the man and the heavy luggage, the youth struggles with his legs trembling badly, but stubbornly claims he is holding up perfectly. Sweating buckets from the extreme effort, Muyong guarantees with a forced smile that he will never ask to quit the training he signed up for. Looking at the dark forest, the master finally suggests finding a place to camp, bringing huge relief to his disciple. Very happy with the news, the apprentice agrees that rest is vital, but the old man walks back his decision, thinking the boy got too excited about the break. Suddenly, the blind fighter notices strange movement through his sharpened perception, and his face turns dead serious. Acting fast, the veteran yanks the boy by the shoulder, pulling him out of the line of fire exactly as he backs away. A group of armed men surrounds the duo in the middle of the dirt road, and the old man flashes a smile saying luck is on their side. The leader of the criminals points his knife, agreeing about the luck, and tells them to hand over all their belongings and scram fast. Startled by the ambush, the boy realizes they are bandits, while the mentor calmly explains it's just a gang that is very common around those parts. Settling down on a rock by the roadside, the experienced warrior finds the situation perfect to use the thieves as sparring partners for the rookie. Drinking his wine in peace, the man tells the student to take care of that trash, and the youth draws his brush with an excited gleam in his eyes. Feeling underestimated by the old man's arrogant attitude, the criminals charge furiously with their blades to attack the boy. Using the wooden branch magic, Muyong shoots roots that tear up the ground, scaring the attackers when they realize he is from the painting forest. The gang doesn't back down and pushes forward trying to focus on the magical weapon, a tactic ordinary warriors always try in these situations. Watching from the front row, the master mentally recalls that the purpose of footwork is to dodge while opening up space to cast your own art. Applying the difficult teachings, the apprentice slides his body backward with great precision and lightness, avoiding the direct danger brilliantly. The bandit tries a quick lunge with his knife, but his arm gets brutally blocked by the attentive guy's firm defense. Taking advantage of the opening caused by the block, the boy prepares a counterattack, pushing his own tool against the enemy's throat. Firing an explosive black ink technique, the MC hits the target dead on and blows him backward, leaving the aggressor agonizing in pain. The tutor approves of his disciple's footwork, acknowledging he managed to pick up the martial basics at an absolutely surprising speed. Even so, the old man tells the kid to stop being slow and finish the job already, getting a promise that he will push himself much harder. From the top of a nearby cliff lit by the moon, a mysterious figure watches all the movement of the battle in absolute silence. Furious at seeing his comrades fall, one of the last henchmen raises his sword yelling, trying to catch the young apprentice totally off guard. Before the blade connects, a sharp magical slash hits the criminal's chest, throwing him back with massive impact. Confident after the direct hit that brought down the dazed opponent, the young artist gets into position and asks if the master liked his grand performance. The veteran flashes a mocking smile and comments it is pure arrogance to brag just for beating a few weak thugs with no technique. Suddenly, the experienced warrior's expression changes as he feels a dangerous presence coming from above, leaving the apprentice quite confused. A tremendous crash hits the ground, exploding the dirt floor and violently throwing the boy back with the heavy wind. Against the light of the full moon in the night sky, a mysterious warrior descends from the cliff top wielding a long weapon. The stranger lands heavily, kicking up a massive dust cloud and cracking a crater in the earth with the tremendous force of his jump. Blocking the duo's path on the road, the attacker deduces they must have business at the 10,000 Echoes Pavilion to be taking that hidden route. The former prisoner talks back, asking what that has to do with him, while the old man confirms the destination and asks his student not to be so honest with strangers. Adopting an intimidating posture covered in shadows, the man with the spear warns that he can't let them pass and orders them to back off while they are still in one piece. Stomping his foot on the ground, Muyong refuses the order, saying they really need the spiritual pill, causing the enemy to focus his gaze and get ready. Spinning the weapon threateningly with his hands, the warrior claims he doesn't care about the duo's motives, only guaranteeing that they won't move forward alive. Without warning, the attacker fires a gigantic spinning wave of magic across the ground, devastating the entire forest area around the strike. The immense aura suddenly released catches even the experienced blind master by surprise due to its massive, disproportionate strength. The violent, slashing vortex flow scatters illusions of sharp leaves tearing up the scene, forcing the boy to use his arms in an instinct of pure survival. Recognizing the lethal technique right away, the MC searches his memory and remembers seeing that exact artwork in a manual kept in the vast Imperial Library. Completely confused by the situation, the young apprentice questions the bizarre reason why a warrior from the unorthodox faction is resorting to such a traditional skill that is exclusive to their great rivals. Gritting his teeth in pure rage at the comment, the mysterious warrior mutters under his breath, complaining about that bold kid's big mouth. Charging furiously into combat, the stranger yells, revealing that the cutting technique was actually his own family's grand secret manual. Therefore, he accuses the fake nobles of stealing the art and lying blatantly to the world. Consumed by the hatred of having his pride hurt, the adversary intensifies the charge, ensuring the boy made a fatal mistake by touching on that wound, warning he absolutely won't leave there alive. Suddenly, the old master steps in front, ordering the aggressor to stop immediately. Using a crushing blast of shadowy magic, the veteran blocks the brutal assault, leaving the opponent shocked. Maintaining a very severe posture, the tutor shows he recognizes the fighter right away, and asks what the guard is doing lost on that road instead of doing his duty protecting the 10,000 Echoes Pavilion. Stunned by the intervention, the warrior freezes, his face showing a lot of tension from being recognized. Without beating around the bush, the experienced veteran pronounces the name Jiang Uk, exposing the night attacker's true identity once and for all. Far away from that dark mountain, the massive pavilion fortress shows off all its luxurious grandeur lit by the day, where the loud sound of hundreds of warriors training hard echoes, revealing the immense martial strength of that place.